this is where the good gruesome stuff comes in. If I don't get out of this tide pool and I don't get home, my husband will eat my babies.
Yeah.
Man, am I right?
Working. Yeah, man, am I right?
Hey everybody, and welcome to Monsters Lounge. Welcome to our new intro.
Yay, it's so short.
It's so short and it's so good. I love it. I'm Jeni.
I'm Tressa.
I almost forgot about that part. I was so excited about the intro. I watched it no less than 10 times just to get to the end where
you're frustrated. It's my favorite part too.
So good. Tressa, it's real cold outside and I'm not excited about it. Let me just start there with some nice gloom and doom. It's gross out. And it's getting grosser.
Like it. And we got nothing really going on. Do we have any events? We got nothing going on. Hey,
we got nothing going on
in Chicagoland in a couple of weeks. Maybe we could have an adventure.
We could have an adventure so long as it's inside. Not in the cold.
Obviously. What am I, an idiot? I'm sorry. Have we not met? I don't go outside.
You go outside. As so clearly stated in the new intro, I've seen you outside.
Yeah, because I cut out the part where I said, that's inside. A cave is inside.
You really should have left that in, though.
I know.
It would have been a lot more clear. So we have a very fun show. We are getting to talk to a lovely lady who we've talked to before, a long time ago, though, like over a year, I think.
Yeah.
But she's fantastic. She's an author, and I'm very excited about it. We're going to hear all about some really cool and magical things because I feel like this time of year needs a little bit of magic, a little bit of, just a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
All right. So our guest tonight is Varla Ventura. And she is the author of Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghost, Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings, along with several other books, including Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings, A Complete Guide to the Wild and Wicked Enchanted Realm. Her forthcoming book, Enchanted Plants, A Botanical Treasury of Folklore and Magic, will be out in 2025, I believe in this spring. When not writing, she can often be found lurking about the deep, dark woods, strolling through cemeteries, and tending her poison garden.
Oh.
Please help me welcome Varla.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh. I think you'd go outside if you had a poison garden.
I think I would.
I think I might do that a lot.
That hits a lot of marks for me, you know?
I'm also really bad at plants. I am really good at killing them unintentionally.
I'm good at plants. I like plants. I've got a lot of them. Yeah. They're sort of all around my house. I think I should maybe delve into this poison garden. Just saying.
Yeah, I think you're a natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wandering around in my widow's robe and...
I mean, everybody needs a Victorian conservatory.
Yes.
That's their house.
Where do you have...
Even if it's a mid-century split level, you still need a Victorian conservatory.
Yes. Where do you have your morning coffee if not there?
Seriously, where do you plot murder if not there?
How do you make it through a long winter plotting murder and drinking coffee if not there?
Thank you.
This is the only thing that we need, really. I've read a couple of your books now, and I'm delighted by them because you give like a tiny explanation of what you're talking about, and then you recount a lot of stories and a lot of like just written accounts, obviously, which would be stories. I'm doing really well at the moment, you guys. I'm doing so good at this whole podcast thing. Anywho, they're very good, but so I kind of wanted to piece out like a couple of things from your books, and I think we should start with the puka. because
Oh,
that
a
just makes
favorite.
me very happy.
Yeah, pukas make me very happy too. That's among one of my favorite creatures.
One of
Um,
the quotes from your books made me extraordinarily excited about it too, because it's just great. They could take the appearance of horses, goats, cats, dogs, and hares. Oh, here we go. It also appears a goat, goblin, dog, eagle, ass, and even a rabbit. I like how there's all those things and then goblin right in the middle.
yeah, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
All kinds of things. Yeah. So a puka, for those who are not familiar with the puka, puka is kind of the word for a shape-shifting trickster fairy. Now, I have heard people refer to sort of like puka as a general word for fae. I've heard that actually repeatedly in traveling in Ireland and things like that, or like, someone will say, "Oh, my grandmother always just said it was the puka." But when you get into kind of more the technical lexicon of the fairy, a puka is a shape-shifting creature. It frequently appears, most often, as a rabbit or a horse, but it also can appear in many other forms. And essentially, its role, like all tricksters, is to kind of just like shake things up, and it doesn't really cause harm, but it definitely makes you reevaluate your life a little bit if you run into a puka.
Shut up.
So they to pray.
I don't need help with that, by the way.
No, I just had an experience recently. I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And as I was walking there, I was like, there's a rabbit in front of me. And I was like, that's weird. You're just hanging out there. Like, what are you doing? And I was also like, I wonder if that means something, because you're just hanging out. I don't ever see rabbits here. I was like, okay, go ahead.
Might have been waiting for you.
Like, listen, I like to put importance on things that aren't necessarily important, so that could be one thing. However,
things to know about you.
Yes. I'm sorry. Continue. Don't shut up. That was me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's I mean, very well. Well, the puka does tend to prey on those who will not be believed. Typically, in a lot of, especially sort of like Victorian era stories, the puka plays on the town drunk. Now you.
This is all coming together.
Are you feeling that?
Listen, it's not that much. It's fine. Like what? 3-4 times a week? It's fine. Good.
This is all coming together.
So now I will say that some of those stories have been infused with morals that maybe weren't there to begin with. So we have to kind of keep that in mind, especially when you think of who was writing these stories. Like the oral stories were going on for centuries and centuries. And then you had certain types of people who were, quote unquote, educated, could write, could read in English or translate things into English. And they were able to put their agenda on everything, right? Same story, different genre. We know this, right. We know this story. So, but anyway, the puka, tends to prey on the town drunk. So you might be stumbling home from the pub. You were supposed to come home hours ago, probably before dark. You probably had some responsibilities that you've shirked at this point. And as you're sort of stumbling home, you might encounter a black horse with red glowing eyes, or a rabbit that grows to an enormous size, or just has a very menacing appearance. Once you've encountered the puka, you, especially with the horse, it kind of, there's all of these accounts of it basically just sort of like comes at you from behind and flips you over onto its back, and then it just runs off across the moors, basically as close to the cliff and the cliffs of insanity. The cliff, well, you're basically as close to death as you can possibly get without actually being that close to death. You're not actually the puka doesn't cause death. It just causes a lot of mayhem. And so that, you can kind of think, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Well, we've all been there, right? Like we remember leaving and we remember getting home and we're not entirely sure what happened in between those point A and point B.
Yes.
Right.
We may have been abducted by a puka. It's entirely possible.
Missing film. Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
it's entirely possible. And so usually the puka kind of appears to, it makes you sort of reevaluate, like, oh, I had this encounter with a puka. Maybe I need to get back on the straight and narrow. Maybe I need to reevaluate my path. There are a few stories of pukas shape-shifting and people being so frightened of them that they will leap off of a cliff.
Oh,
But the puka itself isn't didn't push it off the cliff. It's not causing, it's just,
Right.
fright that's kind of causing someone to run until they aren't looking in front of them and then they fall off the cliff.
Well, that's on them.
Yeah, it is on them. It's totally not on the puka.
No.
And so like many tricksters, so one of the pukas that we all probably know the best is the puka from Harvey, which is a play, but then became a movie starring Jimmy Stewart I believe it was made in the 1930s. It's an old black and white. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. And basically you got Jimmy Stewart sitting on a bar stool talking to an empty bar stool, but he's talking to a very large white rabbit. And he's an embarrassment to his sister because he's the town drunk and no one believes him, but he's having these very in-depth conversations with this invisible friend. If you want to go more like slightly more modern, you've got Donnie Darko, right? That giant black rabbit that just sort of appears and follows you and stalks you. So yeah, pukas are quite delightful. I find them to be one of the most interesting kind of creatures of the fairy kingdom because they're shapeshifters, but two, like they really, really they're disruptors. And I like a good disruptor.
Heck yeah.
I like a good challenge to the status quo, even
Let's
if that
shake it
status quo
up.
might be my own, drunken escapades.
I really like the fact that they're shapeshifters, but it's unusual in the way that so many shapeshifters in lore and myth are, malevolent or evil.
Yes.
And I like that this dude is just out there sort of pranking people.
Yeah, it kind of like slightly mischievous, vaguely ill-intentioned pranks, right?
Yeah.
Like not really, really evil, not the force of evil, but certainly not exactly friendly, right? You don't want to. I mean, I kind of want to encounter a puka, but you generally don't want to encounter a puka. So, and then the other kind of interesting thing, it actually reminds me a lot of like the role that coyote plays, especially in indigenous Southwest stories. You have this sort of trickster. It doesn't really cause harm, but it can lead you to harm. It kind of challenges you to make the right decision in the moment.
Right.
And the puka certainly does that. And it also challenges you to make the right decision, the next day.
Yeah. That's such a good comparison that I would have never thought of, but it's the same kind of vibe, right? Where it's not really mean, but it's not pranking for good.
He's just having a good time. It's fine.
And actually, I think there's a huge number of sort of, creatures in the fairy kingdom that fall into that category. They fall into, we humans, we like to put everything in the good versus evil.
Yeah.
Like that. We love that. We love the black versus white. We love the really like, if I do this, I'm a good person. If I do this, I'm a bad person. Even though almost none of us can actually live that way, nor do we live that way. No. So that the idea, but the fairy kingdom is really kind of like, it's not exactly good. It's not exactly bad. It sort of exists in its own plane, its own time. And, it's haunting. It can be terrifying. It's a place you don't really want to go, but it is a place you can go to if you're seeking help. Mm-hmm. It's kind of another one of those things we've tried to quantify over the years. Like, okay, is this another realm? Is this another dimension? And it's the kingdom of the Fae. You know when you encounter it. And if you've never encountered it, you probably count yourself, pretty fortunate if you haven't run into a puka at this point.
I would imagine so. And jury's still out on Tressa's rabbit.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's very
We'll find
important. I'll go find it. I'm not going back there. I'm lying.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you get for going outside.
Thank you. That's what I've been saying.
We don't need to encourage this sort of behavior. For winter, it's fine. But come springtime, I'm going to start making her go outside again. It's going to happen.
We'll see.
We got a whole summer of adventures ahead.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we do. You can bring an umbrella. We'll pretend like it's inside.
Just bring your own bubble.
That's not how umbrellas work.
We'll pretend. Anyway, so another thing that's endlessly fascinating to me is the story of goblins, right? Like, I loved goblins. I had a book when I was a kid, which the majority of my loves come from my childhood, but it was the Goblin King and the Princess, I think, and she is abducted into the goblin realm, and she has to find her way out using a golden thread.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that fairy tale, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think that goblin can mean so many things to us when we hear it. For some of us, we hear goblin and we think this sort of like fairly unattractive, but also not necessarily evil, maybe slightly misunderstood creature. And I think Tolkien has helped us with a lot of our view of what those things might actually look like. But there's a sort of a whole realm of sort of like domestic fairies that cross over into the goblin world. So you have like hobgoblins and brownies and like house imps. And they tend to be pretty benevolent creatures. They like to protect the house. They like to keep it tidy. They don't ask a lot other than a few shiny things, and then you leave them an offering and you treat them with respect. And also, you can't be slovenly and then just like you can't just like not do your dishes and be like, yeah, the hobgoblin will get it. Don't worry about it. You have to make a pretty solid effort to keep things clean.
To be fair, I like that from my house guests as well. Something shiny, maybe a meal or two, and just clean up after yourself.
Yeah, it's not asking that much. It's not asking that much. So that's like one sort of realm of the goblin. Another common thing is sort of like the goblin that you're talking about, Jeni, which is like the goblin that is definitely misunderstood in the mortal world, has a little bit more of a evil streak, but more in a like, nobody understands me and I just want this thing and I'm going to take it kind of way. More in a like animalistic way. And then you've got some really, really menacing goblins. So it sort of depends on where the stories are from, what time frame they're from, and what words people are using and how things are translated. For example, one of my favorite goblin stories is was translated by this really fascinating woman. She lived in Japan. She was like this Victorian woman that went and lived in Japan, and she spent all of this time sort of like the Grimm brothers did. They went around and they gathered all of these stories, and then they wrote them in German and they translated them. She sort of did that, but in Japan. And I am not entirely sure if she just inserted the word goblin or if that was the word that was given to her. But anyway, so the story is called The Goblin of, I think it's Adadachi. I have to look at the book. But it's set in the mountains, and it's this great, really gruesome story about this man who is walking along a road, and it's like all good stories, right? Suddenly it's darker than you think. It's taking you longer to get where you need to go. So now it's getting dark, and you need to seek shelter for the night. You can't be out on the road in the middle of the mountains, the forested mountains, without shelter. It's going to get cold. There's wild animals out there. So as it's darkening, he sees through the woods a light, and he follows this light, and he sees that it's a little cabin, and he knocks on the door, and this little old lady answers, And she kind of just opens the door, just a little crack, and is like, what do you want? And he says, may I shelter with you for the night? It's getting dark and I have quite a ways to go. And she's pretty hesitant. And then finally he asks her a few times because, men don't know what no means, apparently.
Good thing that's going back through history.
Time immemorial. And eventually he just keeps asking her. I think he asked like 3 times, right? The magical 3 times. So she lets him in. And he's very cold. And she says, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get wood to build a fire. But whatever you do not open that door right there. See that door right there?
I got to open that door.
Do not go in there. You stay in this room only. So the guy's sitting there and he's like, oh, of course. Thank you so much for taking me in. She gives him a little broth or whatever. And then she heads out to get more wood for the fire. So he's sitting there. He's waiting and waiting. And it's like hours have gone by and he's thinking like, what happened to her? Is she okay? And of course, the whole time, Pandora's box, it's eating at his curiosity. What is in this room that is like? So finally, he just can't take it anymore. She's not coming back. He just knows she just left him there. And he just opens the door and he sees it's full of human skeletons and human remains. And he manages to realize that he has encountered this famed goblin of the mountains just in the nick of time. And he runs out of the house and runs to the road and lives to tell the tale while the woman's, approaching the house with the wood that she has for him. So that's a fun goblin story where the goblin is really more of I guess you wouldn't be a cannibal because you'd have to eat goblins if you were a cannibal.
Right.
So you'd be
But the dude is now because he ate the broth, right?
Yeah, so he could. So that's another thing. You never take food or drink when you're.
And always look in rooms that you are told to never look in.
First, look first.
Look
and
absolutely
when somebody says they don't want you to come in, that's good.
It's a good hint.
Find a tree
seems
somewhere.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So apparently that's a legendary goblin in that area, and there's numerous stories, but that's my favorite goblin story. But the idea that a goblin can also be something very, very menacing is I feel like they always kind of are portrayed as menacing, but maybe slightly misunderstood. There's a little Beauty and the Beast element there, right? But this goblin, there was no misunderstanding. So yeah, you wouldn't be a cannibal because you're a goblin, but you certainly you're preying on you sup upon other human beings. So.
Excellent use of the word. We're going to hear more excellent words right after this, Jeni.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, Dave Ward.
Oh, Dave Ward. That's Dave Ward.
Him.
God bless that man. All right.
I promised more excellent words. Let's go.
All right. Calm down over there. All right. What about trolls? Trolls are another big fascination of mine.
Yeah, trolls again. One of the things that I was very surprised with when I was working on this Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings book, were the delightfully beautiful trolls. Now, most of us think of trolls. We think of the troll that's under the bridge. We think of large, sort of somewhat ugly beasts, right? That hide out behind rocks or hide underneath bridges. And traditionally, trolls actually are protectors. They protect water. They protect bridges. They may protect the entrance to caves. So that's why they're still to this day, you know, trolls are traditionally placed at or under bridges. In fact, the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, the original Bay Bridge, had a troll underneath it.
Did it really?
They actually put like a troll into the structure on the bottom part.
I love that.
It, which worked out okay until about 1989, and then collapso. So there are these Scandinavian trolls that and again, now I will say this could very well be a translation thing, like what you call a troll, I call a puka or whatever. So some of it can be that, but there are a number of beautiful stories about these trolls that live in the hillsides throughout Scandinavia, and they are very tall, very sort of wispy in appearance, and almost ephemeral. So there's a word for you, ephemeral.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Trolls.
Excellent.
That's a tongue twister. And they are beautiful, and actually don't sound unlike some descriptions of like the Nephilim. Like they're very really quite glowing and magical. And these trolls, they can cause a little mayhem, but they also can bring good luck, and they're all part of the idea of leaving offerings out, which we do periodically, right? Especially in the winter, we leave a lot of offerings out for a certain elfin troll-like man every winter. So and then there's also Santa. So that really actually surprised me, because I had done I have a few stories about just your average what I think of as a troll, what we see as trolls. We see these troll sculptures, and then we also have like the massive, like Grulja is that giant like witch troll that lives in the mountains of Iceland. And she's amazing. And then she's got all of her like troll sons that run amok in the days leading up to Christmas. So
is she the one that will like eat you if you don't wear your Christmas sweater? Am I?
Yeah.
Love her.
Like eat you. Yeah. Like don't go out naked on Christmas Day. Basically. Yeah. We love her. She's great. She'll put you in her giant cauldron pot.
Yes, be thankful and grateful for your Christmas gifts. What are you doing?
Exactly.
I will eat you if you are not.
Gratitude.
I thought that was the Christmas cat.
The Christmas cat also will stalk you, and maybe it's the Christmas cat that wants you to wear your sweater. But Grulja kills you if you go out on Christmas Eve.
That's right. Yeah, we were hearing about her.
Grulja will kill you at Christmas Eve, and her cat will kill you Christmas Day. And her children will torment you for the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas by doing ridiculous things like licking the pot and stealing the sausage.
That's just kids.
Kids will be kids.
Wild Scandinavian trolls. So I was quite surprised, and I have a couple stories in that book about these just very sort of like very pleasant trolls. One of them is a story about a troll wedding in which these trolls are having this like beautiful wedding, and there's like this very like magical fairy music kind of coming down the mountain, and then for reasons I have still yet to fully understand, when the people come close, they disappear, but one of them turns into a ball of yarn and runs down the hill. And I'm not ever
just like Tressa.
What is that all about? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what the
That is such an
significance
odd,
of the. I know. It's a
odd
beautiful story, and then it kind of falls apart at the end because it's like, okay, well, wait, what? Now we're a ball of twine. Wait, what?
Oh, am I supposed to make a sweater for Christmas? What are you doing here?
Yeah,
based
maybe,
around these Christmas sweaters, man.
I don't know. It was very odd, but you know, that's why you include it because it's so weird.
Yes.
What just happened there? There's another thing that always comes up, and I think I might have figured out why this is, but I ask people frequently, so I'd love your take on this. This has to do with changelings.
Oh, I love.
And I've read this in multiple places. The two places that I know off the top of my head. This comes up in William Butler Yeats's collection of fairy and folk magic, and then also Lady Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, who was a folklorist and a witch, and there are many books that have her kind of gatherings of like all of these little tidbits of folk magic and wisdom and fairy wisdom. Anyway, they both talk about this it's like how you outsmart the changelings. So just real quick, a changeling is a fairy switch. It's when a human baby is taken, or it can be a person. I guess a baby is a person. It can be
a real live one.
Yeah, a real live one. It can be a grown-up, basically. It could be an adult. It could be an older child. But most frequently, it's babies. And they're switched. They don't just take it and never come back. I mean, maybe they do. But that
would be rude.
Usually, they put a different baby in its place. Sidebar,
like a better baby, right?
Well, I mean, we know today that there were a lot of things that people said were like of the fairy kingdom and were equated to like witchery that were really just like very normal birth defects that, where people were accused of things for like, look, if you weren't quote unquote normal and able to do all the regular duties that you needed to do, sweeping the hearth or whatever the heck you had to do there, right? You were you were labeled as another. And as soon as you're labeled as an other, then you could be from another realm. So
Right. And I don't know anything like this is not my realm, so I don't know anything, but I have heard a lot of people conjecture that when they're like 2, 3, 4-year-old comes back and they're just slightly different, it could have been autism. Listen, nobody knew what autism was for a really long time.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're weird now. Yeah.
Nobody knew what a lot of these things were.
Yeah.
So
right, exactly.
And you also had, you didn't have your prenatal care was a midwife, and you had women that would have children over 20-year spans, right?
Yes.
Easily. So they're just having children after children, child after child. And yes, and there wasn't a great understanding of medicine or
right.
Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
That's sort of the caveat there with the changelings, right? But anyway, so one of the things that you would do if you suspected a changeling, if you suspected that your child was a changeling, there were like these methods that you could employ in order to basically like let the fairies know you were onto them and get them to bring your child back. And in Lady Wilde's book and in William Butler Yeats' book, and in at least, I've read it in multiple places, one of the things that they do is it's called a brewery of eggshells. And they basically set a pot of boiling water going and they throw eggshells in it. So I have a couple theories about why this might be, but I would welcome your thoughts on it. Because now, other things might happen with that boiling water, but generally nothing happens with the boiling water. The boiling water is a threat to the fairies. I'm going to pour boiling water on this changeling or whatever. And then they make the switch back, or it chases them off. Or you can declare like, I know you're out there and I'm coming to get my child. And if you don't return it, I'm going to, XYZ, and then put this boiling water on. So the only thing, so I've read it in so many places, but never read very many theories about it, like written theories anyway. And so I guess that's how you read. And so I thinking about it now, I've been thinking about this for many years, which is kind of probably sad, but I think eggshells would be something that could really cause the water to boil and look like something was cooking in there, but they're also a throwaway. So you're right. So that was one thing. They might smell, is what I was thinking. They might produce this sulfuric smell like boiled eggs do. Right. And you wouldn't want to waste eggs. You wouldn't want to waste food in this situation for idle threats. You want to use something that you would dispose of anyway. So that's as far as I've ever gotten with that. I mean, I don't know, but it occurs repeatedly. So
I'm going to go with the sulfur smell. Like that. Are you? I feel like that checks out. I've never boiled eggshell.
I know. I don't just know alone, it does right?
Like
just
sulfur
eggshells.
At that point.
I have two thoughts on that one. Like the first is that they would look like tiny, like if we're thinking about fairies, we're looking at tiny little fairy heads, right? Oh, like boiled skulls, something like that.
Ooh, I like the way you think.
Right? I wonder if there's some sort of connection with, like, is it iron rich?
What's in
like eggs?
Calcium. Eggs are iron rich. Shells have calcium and potassium in them. You can bury them in your garden, and they'll give potassium to your plants.
But I'm wondering if there's any connection there, right? Something that would be used as some sort of supplement, because iron was the big deal for fairies, right?
Do you mean that they would just sort of then do something with this water would actually be beneficial?
Yeah.
Interesting. And then that made me think, like, is there also a connection, just like magically speaking, with like eggshells, the fertility, the discarded part of the fertility? You're trying to get your baby back. I don't know. It could just, I like those.
I like the theories. Fertility theory as well. Iron, that's more of a beef thing, right? Like there's not going to be a lot of iron in eggshells.
Well, who knows? I mean, we're talking about back in the day. So, I mean, there was all sorts of unconventional
iron.
No, I mean, unconventional, like medical, practices, and maybe
iron does keep fairies away.
Yeah.
In fact, if you are ever doing any kind of fairy magic or fairy ritual, you want to make sure there's no iron involved, because then you'll just repel them. So
I just mean like there's not like is there a lot of iron in eggshells?
I don't know.
It might be a thought, like maybe the sulfur smell from the eggs smells a lot like
something that would repel them. Well, it's certainly a repulsive smell. I mean, I think that's
right,
but it's also a very metallic smell.
Yes. And I wonder if there's something about, like, I mean, there's some kind of element of practicality in that as well. Well, I've got to put something on the stove to boil. So I'm going to boil these eggshells, and then maybe something's done with that, because, you can just throw them in your garden or what. I'm going to, honestly, if I ever find out definitively, I'll let you know. But it appears quite frequently in literature, in folklore.
Is there like a folk remedy that's based around eggshells?
Don't know.
Because that might be something in there too.
But there's certainly this practice of it, like repelling. But what you were saying when you said the thing about iron, it could have something to do with like just a repelling. There's a repelling element there. And I always thought it was maybe kind of more like what you were saying about the tiny skulls, but like that there was water boiling. Like I am legitimately boiling this water, and it's full of things, and I'm going to like pour this on you when you come outside my window or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know. Interesting though, right? So how did we even get to that? I don't know. But
trolls, fairy skulls. It seems to make sense.
Yeah, it was just natural progression.
If I had a quarter for every time I thought, how did we even get here?
Or
on this
fairy
show?
Skulls, maybe. Same thing.
Whatever. It's fine. It's totally fine. We're going to hear about a couple of more amazing things. One of my favorites, which is mermaids, after this break that we've got coming up. right?
Oh, hey, Tressa. Jeni? Oh, I'm just reading my book by international TV sensation, Dave Schrader. I'm reading the book, too. I don't remember the name of it or who wrote it, but yeah. There, I like your shirt. You? I got it on monstersloungepodcast.com. You've got a great shirt, too. Oh, this? That's so weird. I got it at monstersloungepodcast.com, too. They have really great stuff. A full variety. I know, right? They have everything. Shirts. Tote bags. Clutches. A phone case, I think. It's the best.
Still good.
That was excellent. I really
good.
enjoyed that. I rarely enjoy commercials, but I really enjoyed that.
Listen, it's a twist, it's a turn, it's great.
I need to go to monstersloungepodcast.com
We
right
all
now
do.
and get a shirt.
Yeah.
Next time I'm on,
seriously.
I'm going to be wearing a shirt.
That's excellent.
right.
We're going to start designing eggshells and throwing those in there too. All right. One of my favorite things in the whole wide world is the ocean. And so, of course, I can't let this episode go by without asking about mermaids, since you have an entire book called Among the Mermaids.
Yes. Well, shall we talk a little bit about the misperceptions about mermaids?
Yes, I would absolutely love that.
So I think we have a general idea of, like, you know, mermaids being beautiful, usually topless or wearing shell bras, hanging out with lobsters, playing calypso under the sea.
We
have this. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Right.
But, the original Little Mermaid story that entire franchise is based upon, it doesn't go quite like that.
Whoa, what?
Oh, no.
The Hans Christian Andersen scarred me for life as a child.
Right? Same.
The girl who trod on a loaf. Oh, I still, every time I think of that story, my body just like, oh, that's so sad. Anger stuck in the swamp. But the line that always stood out to me, which I learned when I was far too young, was that, when she traded her ability when she traded so that she could walk on land. So we know, right? She trades her voice, and there's this is the plot twist and all that stuff. But we don't see this in the Disney movies or whatever. But every step she takes is like daggers in her feet.
Yeah.
So her feet are just like torn to shreds and just bloody as she's walking across the shore. But hey, she can breathe on land. So
hooray.
What we wouldn't give. So we have this perception of mermaids sort of being these sort of delightful things to gaze upon. And there's not necessarily evidence to say that they're not beautiful or don't appear beautiful.
Right.
However, they certainly have so first of all, especially if you subscribe to, like the Irish lexicon of the Kingdom of the Fairy, mermaids are fairies, and they live in their domain is the ocean. And they can shapeshift a little bit, right? So they can appear one way and then appear very differently as they're dragging you and holding you under the water.
I do that too.
Now, they're not
really
all bad. They're not all bad. I mean, they do. If they like you, they'll guide you home. They'll guide you away from the rocks. They'll make sure that you actually get, a decent haul when you're out fishing. There's plenty of people who have very positive relationships with mermaids that usually involve some kind of offering and a lot of respect for the ocean. But there's also plenty of stories of mermaids, whether it's deliberate or it's just like, why don't you come play with me under the water? What do you mean you can't breathe under here?
Mm-hmm.
This we can all breathe underwater. Yeah, come with me.
What are you, stupid? You guys.
Look at this sucker.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, he's checking out my tits again. Let's get that guy.
This guy.
Easy target, right?
Men, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm.
So easy.
Can't eat them. Can't
But-
drown them.
Yeah, frequently they will sort of entice you into the water. But then, if you've spent any time swimming, even in a Great Lake, right? But in the ocean, the tides, the rhythm, the sounds, the many enchanting things happening around you, it's very, very easy to look up and realize that you are much further from shore than you thought you were. It's very easy to get disoriented in the ocean. And that is basically the crux of where the mermaid operates. Oh, what are you doing out here? Oh, look, you go around a corner and you happen to see a mermaid. And one of my favorite stories is the mermaid. There's a few versions of it, but it was where the mermaid is she's like stuck in a tide pool.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes, right? Classic mermaid stuck in a tide pool. And then a gentleman comes along.
Obviously.
On his way home, when he's supposed to probably be home again. He's got some duties at home. He's shirking.
Sure.
And but here's this woman and she's stuck. And so she basically hey, if I don't, this is where the good gruesome stuff comes in. If I don't get home, if I don't get out of this tide pool and I don't get home, my husband will eat my babies.
Yeah.
Men, am I right?
Mer King. Yeah, man, am I right? the Mer King is not gentle. So she preys upon his good sensibilities and he scoops her up and he's just sort of, wow, I can't believe I've actually encountered a mermaid. I've heard there are mermaids along this shore for all of these years. And he's sort of carrying, just a little further out. I can't quite get in from here. It's a little shallow.
Right.
Keeps carrying her. Just a little further. Oh, now the tide's starting to swirl in. And then suddenly her arms are locked around his neck. And suddenly she's not letting go. And she's pulling him in. And, somehow at the last minute, of course, he escapes the narrow clutches, rushes back to shore and promises that he'll never walk along that shore half drunk from the pub again. Right. That's
right.
I think he's actually sitting there drinking whiskey or something. But one of the coolest things, and I love thinking of mermaids like this, because sometimes I guess, of all the things, like mermaids seem to be seen the least frequently. And the idea that mermaids, unlike a lot of the other kind of, like goblins or whatever, although in the goblin, the story you're talking about, Jeni, earlier, he does kind of like kidnap this princess, right? But
right.
The intermarriage between a supernatural species and a human, that goes back, aeons. And there are like the Mermaid of Zenor, which is in Cornwall, which is where the mermaid chair is, which is a bench in a church that's carved, and it has all these elaborate mermaid carvings. She was believed. All the people said, well, she never actually came to church, so she was kind of looked upon as a witch. And I have heard the theory put forth that mermaids were killed during the witch trials. Because basically, if anyone thought you were either a witch, if you weren't a witch, you were a shapeshifter of some kind. So you were either a vamp. It was like, oh, you're not a witch. Okay, you're a vampire, a werewolf, or a.
Basically, if you had a vagina, you were going to be killed.
Or if you were queer in any way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that is one of the reasons that we don't see as many mermaids, right? That they were actually like hunted and persecuted. I also learned that there are mermaid depictions in churches. I think there's at least a dozen of them in Ireland. And at one point, mermaids were put into like slate epitaphs and into paintings in churches as a caution against vanity.
Interesting.
But I believe that the mermaids, where the mermaids were placed and in those churches, are communities, seafaring communities that had a symbiotic relationship and an understanding and respect for the ocean and the mermaids within. And one of the stories in my book actually came from a woman. She's Indigenous Australian, and she tells this whole story about her her people's relationship with mermaids, and that mermaids basically dreamed them into existence. And as a result, they have an abundant life as long as they leave regular offerings for the mermaids, which people do to this day. They leave beautiful, offerings of little altars and things on the side of as the tide's coming in for people so the mermaids can take their offerings. Beautiful biodegradable things, flowers and shells.
Right,
and things
right.
like
I
that.
love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. And I actually had someone give me you know how you get like the firsthand accounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all my books, I love a good firsthand account. I love when people tell me their stories of, it's a ghost story, whatever their encounter is.
Right.
I got crickets with the mermaids. It was like, okay, no one's willing to admit that they've seen a mermaid. And a friend of mine said, man, when the witches and pagans are drawing a line in the sand, you must be like, I was like, yeah, I'm on the other side. I'm definitely on the other side.
Yeah.
But I did get a woman who wrote in the stories in the book, and she actually sent me a sketch, which isn't in the book, but it's, she had this encounter where she was, I feel like she was in the Bahamas. I can't remember exactly.
It was. I remember that story.
Yeah, it was the Bahamas, right? And so she was with her mom. They were on vacation, and she was staying in like one of those like little huts that's kind of out over the water. And she woke up in the night and saw this. I mean, this drawing she gave me. It looked sort of like alien/elf like. It was like kind of ElfQuest. It had an ElfQuest. If you remember ElfQuest, a little bit of the ElfQuest vibe. But it had glowing red eyes. It was a male. And they woke up in the morning and there was a puddle of water there. Oh. And her mother had not seen it, but her mother had these really strange dreams in the night. Mom. And was sort of kept waking up. And like the next day at breakfast, they talked about it. But she basically saw this creature in her room. This glowing red-eyed mer creature in her room. It didn't do anything to her. It just kind of looked at her and she looked at it. And then, classic look away for a second, and then it's gone. And that is probably, I've had numerous stories of, like hearing things, like hearing a sort of a siren song, people getting lost in a sudden, fog rolls in. And a voice sort of like leading them out of harm's way back to the harbor. But that's the only actual physical manifestation story that I have been personally told. I'm sure there's many more out there. But I was just I was in awe of it. I really wanted to put the sketch in the book, but it was, publisher was like, we've got an aesthetic where
oh, come on.
Art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I like that story a lot. I had no idea it would be so difficult. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like, I don't know why I found it so difficult to believe that you're not getting a lot of mermaid stories, but you hardly hear them, right?
People will tell you all about Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, giant like ape man running through the woods, but you won't believe in mermaids? Please.
Yeah. Come on. Get out of here. Like, I feel like even with fairies, like for a long time, it's like, fairies, get out of here. But now I'm like,
the thing is that people have a misconception when they hear the word fairy, and rightly so, because again, we have the Disneyfication of folklore, right? So we think Tinkerbell. We think like these little, we think these cute little flower fairies. There's the like Alcott's, beautiful little flower fairies, that sort of Victorian era of like personifying plants with these like lovely little childlike creatures.
Sure. Yeah.
But really, when you think about fairies, think of them more like the plant kingdom, right? You got your palm trees, you got your tomatoes. There's just like all different kinds of plants in the plant kingdom, and there's
your
all
poison
different
garden.
Kinds of fairies. You got your datura, foxglove, whatever you need.
Yeah, speaking of plants and poison gardens, I believe you have a book coming out.
I do.
In the spring.
Tell us about it.
Yes. It's coming out in April. It's called Enchanted Plants, A Botanical Treasury of Folklore and Magic. I think that's the subtitle. I often mix it up because I think it should be a botanical treasury, but it might be a treasury of botanical folklore and magic. I can't remember. Anyway, you get the gist, right?
Yeah.
We had a little argument about that.
That's fair.
And it is actually an exploration of plants through fairy tales and folklore. So essentially, the book is arranged in a way that you visit gardens that you might find in fairy tales. So you start out in the Queen's Garden, and then you move to the Cottage Garden, and then you end up in the Witch's Garden, aka the Poison Garden.
Oh.
You meander out to the meadow, you meander into the woods, and then eventually you meet the sea or the swamp. And so the plants that are included in there are, I had over 100 plants originally.
I imagine,
There's a third of them in the book because what I really wanted to do, because there are hundreds of books of plant lore, and I love them all. I probably own most of them. I mean, I used my, library I've been collecting since I was 10. I was like, yes, I finally get to use this book of nerdy plant lore that I've had for 30 years. Yes, you'll see the bibliography has some pretty old books in there. But I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was really exploring plants that play a very prominent role in a story. So in other words, the story couldn't really exist without this plant. This plant has a significant role in it. So like one of my favorites that I stumbled upon is actually Rapunzel. And now you'll remember this when I tell you this, but you may have forgotten it until that point. Rapunzel, that entire story is based on a plant. And if you recall, the way she gets locked, Rapunzel with her beautiful hair, you think of long, beautiful hair, right? The way she gets locked into that tower is because she's promised to a witch when her mother is pregnant. Well, her mother is craving this plant that is growing next door in the witch's garden.
That's right. I forgot all about
So
that
she's
part.
craving this plant, and she's looking out the window, and she sees it, and she basically coaxes her husband to climb over the witch's fence and steal this plant from her. And she devours it, and it's so good. She makes herself a nice little salad. She eats it right up, and then she wants more, and then she wants more. And so he goes over and he gets it again. Well, the third time he's over there, the witch catches him. And instead of turning him into a toad or whatever she might want to do, she says, no problem. Just, and he blames his wife immediately. My wife, she's pregnant.
Of course.
And
get out of
says,
here.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, I'll let you go and you can have your life and I won't curse you, but you have to give me your firstborn child.
Yeah.
They were like, done.
So that's how
they were giving away those kids.
So it's based on a plant. Well, if you want to trip out a little bit more, that plant is called rampion. And it is a sort of a leafy green. It gets beautiful little flowers. The German word for that plant is Rapunzel.
Oh,
boom.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so excited about that. I completely forgot about that part of the story.
Yes. Well, so what happened for me is I remembered that the story was plant-based, but I had it as rampion, and I was reading a version of the Grimm's story of Rapunzel, and in it they had written an introduction, and they called the plant. They called this plant known as rampion, also called Rapunzel, and it caused in the editing process, I was like, no, I don't mean Rapunzel the character here. I mean Rapunzel the plant. We're keeping that lowercase. We're going to uppercase here when we're talking about the character later. It's all centered around or triggered by this plant. So those are the kind of stories I was like really looking for, where a plant kind of either started the whole thing or was at the center of it. And like apple is a really common one, right? There's always the golden apples on the tree, the apples that are being coveted. There's numerous tales of the apple. So like apple, I knew right away apple was going to be in there.
Mm-hmm. What about roses?
Yeah, roses are in there. Roses are very much in there. And actually, in another how much time do we have?
We don't, but keep going.
Okay. Okay. So I had another epiphany trip out moment. I was at Culloden Battlefield in Scotland last year, and I was working on the book at that point. And the woman who was had walked us around this part of the battlefield, she was talking about this crofter's cottage, and she started talking about so I knew that the symbol of a Jacobite, there's the Jacobite uprising, that's like Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that story. A lot of us know that story from Outlander and other such films in history. So anyway, I knew that the Jacobite symbol was the white rose. And so I was standing there and I was thinking about, she was talking about that after Culloden, when the Jacobites were killed, there was sort of a mass purge throughout the Highlands. It was absolutely tragic, where basically the British soldiers would go through and they would say, they would ask a mundane question. So the question that she put forth, she said, they would say, are you a gardener? And then if you answered yes, they would kill you, right? But really it was a trick question. So, but she said that and I was like, wait a minute, why did you say gardener specifically? And she was kind of trying to explain, oh, well, it's a little bit of a trick question. It was basically like a question that everybody gardened because everybody grew their own food. And I'm standing there with my best friend, kind of standing there, and I'm looking at this cottage. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, painting the roses red.
No.
Get out.
And I got chills. And I whispered to my friend, I was like, painting the roses red. This is crazy. Now, Dodson, Charles Dodson, aka Lewis Carroll, he was English and he wrote that story in the 1800s. Culloden happened 150 years before that. However, at the battlefield around that time, that battlefield was purchased by a man who wanted to preserve it as the battlefield that it was. And all of those headstones that are there, including this large cairn that's built, those were all added during the Victorian era. So this was a very common story that was going around. So there's Alice in Wonderland is one of those stories that, there are so many theories about all of the hidden themes in there. But the painting the roses red, which in that story is to appease the queen, right? It's to keep the queen from flipping out.
Yeah.
They know they have to paint them. But it's also a white rose. So you would have a white rose growing over your garden gate to say Jacobites are welcome here, because it was a secret underground message.
Right.
It was like a way to say, you can come here for the night. We'll protect you. We won't turn you in. Right. So to paint them red, which was the red coats, right? So a theory of mine. Yeah. It's in the book. I thought, well, I'm just going to follow this thread because I think it's true.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's your privilege as an author. I don't say it's unequivocal. It's a theory I have, and it the way that it came to me made me feel that there was truth in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
That's so good. I'm so excited for this book. I really, really am.
Yeah. So it's coming out April second week of April or something, 2025. And something, if you're interested at all in plants, I'm appearing at the Botanica Obscura conference, which is a virtual conference, and it's all full of amazing plant people who do presentations about, it's put on by Kobe Michael, who is the Poison Path grimoire and the Poison Path. He's the Poison Path. He's the Poison Garden man. He's amazing. And it's put on by him and a few other people. And there's all kinds of incredible talks. And that's in March, the first weekend in March, I believe. So that's a cool conference that's coming up. And awesome. I'm trying to get some, botanical garden gigs. So that would be fun.
Seriously, though,
I'm breaking out of the occult bookstore
but just a circuit.
And just
just
a
a
little,
little bit.
It's more of a
just
Yeah.
crack.
Oh,
So
the
you got
botanical thing
gloves.
is awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
I'll put as many links in the show notes as possible. So find those there if you guys are interested, please.
Yeah, and
And
please
it's just
do.
available
Yeah,
for pre-order now. So you know.
Yeah.
There.
Good-
Oh,
good order.
and one other thing. I'll tell you about it.
Please.
It's still being produced right now. It will have gilded edges.
Oh,
It's hardcover. It's got a ribbon. I know. I'm never gonna write another thing, right? It's like, forget it. I got a book with gilded edges.
you don't understand. You don't
Jenny's gonna
understand.
melt
No, I
right
do.
now.
I fight so hard on this show with Tressa because I love books.
She loves a
and
quality
to
book.
find a quality book with binding and a bookmark. And now you're saying gilded edges?
Yeah, and foil stamping too.
Oh God.
I know. I feel
I'm
the
gonna cry
same
a little
way.
bit.
I feel the same way, and I feel that I almost kind of feel like I got away with something.
I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, I
I'm
feel
so
like I got
excited.
away with something, and I'm just very happy about it.
Oh, good Lord. You know that I'm going to get this book, and then I'm going to talk about it incessantly
Great
on the show.
Please do.
Yeah. You'll have to come back when it gets released so we can read from it and drink hot chocolate and tea. I don't
No,
know.
we'll drink
Exactly.
alcohol.
Yes, thank you.
I'll have the hot chocolate.
Like
but you
a
guys drink
gin or
alcohol.
something that has a lot of botanical
Yes.
qualities to it.
There you
Hendrix.
go.
Yeah.
Okay. Varla, thank you, and we will
Thank
see you
you
soon
so
because
much.
this
Yes.
is delightful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Everybody
both.
else! Don't forget to find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Paranormal 60 Network. Like, comment, subscribe, and check out our merch on our website, monstersloungepodcast.com. Send us an email or a comment. We love hearing from people. Sorry, Ryan, Misha. I'm sorry. We're really bad about the chat. Sorry,
We're
dude.
so bad. We love reading it, but it's so I never
We
know when to
do.
interject. But thanks for
it's
being in there and thanks for chatting with us
Yeah.
and everybody else.
We love you. So until next time, thanks for visiting the Monsters Lounge.